Hey there, fellowship family. Welcome to your one-stop shop for all things church life. I'm Mark Francis, once again your host for today. I have a young couple with us here that I'm excited to introduce to you guys and get to know. This is Todd and Sloan Houser. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Don't be nervous. Life will be fine. We'll be able to chat and hang out and connect and just pretend like nobody's watching. It's all good. Yeah. So the last name is a little familiar. So explain what that connection of Houser is to the church here at FBC.
Yeah, so my parents actually met here back in the 1990s.
Uh-huh.
And then my dad is Joe Houser. He's on the elder board.
Uh-huh.
And then my mom, Wendy Houser, has served in a variety of places around FBC. So I've been...
Yeah. So you grew up in this world, in this culture here at FBC.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you talk about your dad, and I'll date myself, and I hate saying this now, but when I first started coming to FBC, it was now coming up on 25 years ago. So over a generation, right? And back then, there was a young adult ministry called Connection. Mm-hmm. And the very first Connection meeting I went to, your dad was at the front, and he was filling in for Jim Poole at the time and gave his version of a message.
Right.
I can't remember what it was, but I was thinking to myself, I was like, wow, I'm younger than him and he's a little bit older than me, and I'm looking around the room like I might be able to fit in here, but I'm not sure. Couldn't tell. So I stuck it out, and the Connection crowd grew. And so just so you guys know, that's a history lesson for FBC. There's been a young adult ministry for that long. Right. And Connection grew, and then over a certain period of time, young adults somehow they get older, like me.
Right.
And so then you move on, and then there was a group that met called Cornerstone. That was the next iteration and version of young adults. That crowd kind of aged out, and then up grew a new crop of young adults, and that developed Keystone. And now there's some of the leadership who was the originators and starters of Keystone are now aging out. And here you guys are. So that is the big introduction to Todd and Sloan. So I'll let you share your story. So before we really get and dive into Keystone, if you grew up here and were raised in this church, how did you meet this Miss Beautiful Sloan over here?
So I went to James Madison University. I went there I started in August of 2019. So probably about 8 months before COVID started. And we had met each other kind of through a mutual friend, but then also InterVarsity, a Christian organization at JMU. Mm-hmm. Her roommate freshman year was Chloe Mullen, and the Mullins are a very popular name in FBC, just like the Housers are. And so I knew Chloe from growing up, and then also just getting more involved in that ministry, we got to know one another. And then I think during COVID, once COVID had hit, we got sent home from school, and we were kind of acquaintances at that point. Mm-hmm. But I thought she was very pretty, and I decided that I was bored during COVID, and I wanted to start talking with her, and so we kind of started talking back and forth. And after she went to Colorado for like 3 weeks and got back home, we eventually went on a date in Harrisonburg.
Nice. So that's your version of the story. Right. Sloan, where are you from, and what drew you to JMU, and then what was your first interaction with Todd? What did that make you feel like?
So I'm originally from Yorktown, Virginia.
Uh-huh.
Well, I say that, but I did grow up overseas. My dad was in the Air Force. He was a F-16 pilot. So I lived overseas for 8 years, and then we moved back to Virginia and grew up there. And both my siblings went to JMU. And so originally I was like, there's no way I'm going to JMU. Yeah. I don't want to do that. I don't want to follow in their footsteps. And then I got to applying to schools and stuff and realized that there really wasn't another school that I felt a connection towards or really wanted to go to. And so that's kind of how I ended up there. And then his version of events is accurate. We just met through IV and through our friend Chloe. And we're just friends for a while. We hung out with a group of people called our movie Groovy. And just kind of started a friendship. And then during COVID, we started talking a little bit more. And then he asked me on a date. And then we spent like 12 hours together on our first date. And yeah, I mean, I feel like the rest was kind of history after that. It was
Progressed
very
from
easy.
there.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was very easy.
Well, I can't imagine what life was like for a student in college during COVID.
Yeah.
Just paint that picture real quick. I mean, what was the experience like, and how you were able to interact with people, and then obviously each other. You guys met during that time, but just paint a picture for those that don't even know what that was like.
Yeah, I think it was hardest not for us because at least we had a semester of college that wasn't COVID, and so we kind of got like a taste of what college should look like if there wasn't a nationwide pandemic or a worldwide pandemic. But I think the class below us was the ones that we really had to help them adjust because they were fully COVID. You know, it was masks, it was distance. I started leading a small group my sophomore year of college, and the first 3 meetings we had were over Zoom.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about how hard it is to build community with masks and over Zoom. And so it was difficult, but I think having InterVarsity, having a Christian community that was able to support one another and be around one another and give that just instant community to people, I think was the biggest game changer for us. So.
What about your take on that?
It was interesting. I think there was a lot of a very high stress situation for a lot of people, just with all the different mandates that were going around, and not knowing when you'd see your friends again, and not knowing if we would be going back to college at any point. I think there just was a lot of uncertainty, but I will say that like having the InterVarsity community was a huge help. We would do like Zoom small groups and stuff. So for me, that's where I think I was really established that like I needed to have a good group of Christians to fall back on and stuff. So.
It's interesting that both you guys referenced Christian friends and relationships that are based in Christ, and so it is a high stress, high anxiety level that the world was in during that time, and we've been able to get beyond that. But then here we are in a political climate that people have high stresses and anxiety as well, and so just one thing comes up after another where the world around us gets stressed, and so what did you guys find with those relationships that were able to kind of help decompress? Like, obviously God is at the forefront of that. So how you guys encourage each other as a community, what really went on? So you're hanging out through Zoom, what other things, what kind of lended your kind of rest, I guess I should say, to be more prevalent than the anxiety? What did you lean on in that time?
I mean, I think it's just as simple as like the foundation that we all had was the same. So knowing that like the Lord was in control over the situation and that whatever his purpose was, like his will be done. I think just having people in my life that kind of constantly reminded me of that, and were like actively pursuing Christ in their life and trying to live like him. It made it so that they were actively like caring about me, and it was reciprocated. So there's like a community that even though it was over Zoom, it was based in the same foundation, and we are all like, I don't know, we all were rooted in the same hope.
Yeah. So I'll get to your story, Todd, in a second, but lean in on that for me, Sloan, because you're talking about going to college and already having a foundation, a faith in Christ. When did you come to faith, and what did that look like for you, to where by the time you got to college, you knew, I've got to find Christian relationships?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I think, like a lot of people who grow up in the church, which I did, there's really not a time I can say I, like, didn't know the Lord, because, again, I was going to church. My parents are both believers, so I came to know Christ, and I remember asking him to, like, be my savior when I was probably, like, 8, like pretty young, and then I got baptized when I was 11. But growing up, moving around so much, like we weren't necessarily always part of the same church. We just couldn't be. And then it was difficult for me to get connected in any of the like youth programs that we had at our churches. I'm not even quite sure why. I think none of my close friends from high school or middle school really went to those, so it made it a little bit harder to find connections, and I wasn't super consistent about it. And I played sports, and that kind of like, it all just ended up taking a lot of my time. So when I decided I was going to JMU, I was like, I really feel that I need more Christian community. I just felt very kind of alone in my pursuit of faith as a high schooler, as a young person, and I didn't really want that anymore. And it was like really a kind of a big leap of faith for me, and like a big moment where I was like, okay, God, if you want me to have Christian friends, like I'm completely open to that. Please, lead me in that direction. And it was funny because the way I became freshman roommates with Chloe Mullen is because we met through Facebook, but she only reached out to me because I had put in my like profile that I really wanted to find a church in the area, and I almost didn't include that. And then I just felt something being like, you need to put that in there because that's the whole point. You want Christian community. You want someone to room with who's going to want to go to church with you. So I put that in there, and she literally only reached out to me because I had that there. And then from there on, it was just like every opportunity I gave the Lord to like bring someone into my life or find Christian community, it was just answered. And I think that was a huge blessing because not every season's going to be like that, which I think leads into Keystone. And being a young adult, it's different. College community is everyone's doing the same thing all the time. You're very close to people. So I think in that way it was a little bit easier, but I still count that as like a huge blessing because it was something I didn't have. And then I found, and it was fantastic, and now I want to always have it.
Yeah, no, it's cool to have that foundation, first of all, but then the Spirit leading you to basically say, yes, continue to pursue other people, you know, because that was something about COVID that I know people could easily get isolated. But there's the call biblically to look for community and to just not forsake assembling. And so it's just crazy times back then. But, Todd, just if somebody asked you, how did you come to know the Lord? How do you answer that question?
Very similar to Sloan. I think the only really contrary is that I just stayed in the same church. I like I said, I grew up at FBC, was here every Sunday, came to know the Lord very, very much at a young age. Don't know an exact date or time, but I think just having parents that were very Christ-centered and church-centered as well, and just made it a commitment that we were going to go to church on Sundays as much as we could. I played sports growing up, and so there were times where I had tournaments and stuff like that. But I think that was there were role models in that scenario that made me want to pursue that faith on my own once I got to college. Because I think it is sometimes when you grow up in the same church for so long, you trying to consider, is it my parents' faith or is it my faith?
Right.
But then when I got to college, especially going to a secular college, it was like, okay, now it's your choice.
Yeah.
Because my parents aren't here, so I could easily just lie to them every week and say, yeah, I'm going to church. Or I could say, I want to take this faith as my own and be serious about it. And so I think that was the two paths that were put in front of me in college, and I chose to pursue.
What was that, not a turning point, but the light bulb moment where you did decide, okay, yeah, this is my own faith, and I think I am going to pursue? Because the statistics are staggering of people and kids and young adults who grew up in the church no longer attend church and no longer have the faith. Right. So what do you feel like was I say light bulb moment, but just the revelation for you personally, both you guys would be like, yes, this is my faith and not my parents?
Yeah. Well, I think I had to go experience the world. I think I played high school safe, and I played just growing up safe, and kind of just stayed in a bubble and stayed in my Christian circle. And then when I got to college, it was like, I got no parents now.
Go crazy.
Yeah, right. And so what I had to do was I had to go see what the world had to offer, and to know that what Christ had to offer was much better. And I think what I saw in college immediately from day one were these mature guys that were serious about their relationship with the Lord as their own. And having that example from so early on because of InterVarsity, it was like the Lord just opened my eyes to, this is the kind of man that you should start becoming. These guys that take their relationship with the Lord seriously, and they see that the ways of the world are wicked, but the ways of the Lord are true, and that this is something that you should strive to pursue.
So a little bit of a mentorship component of looking to a couple of older guys on campus there, and InterVarsity played a role in that. But Sloan, you mentioned that one of the things you were looking for was a church. And so what did that process look like for you being at JMU, of finding a church and attending a church, especially getting into the post-COVID era, where you were able to actually attend in person? Where did you land? Did you land in attending one specific church all the time, or did you bounce around?
I say we because he was a big part of my college life, because we did start dating in the middle of COVID going into sophomore year. So sophomore through senior year, we were dating and going to church together. So my freshman year, I think I went to a church that both my siblings had gone to. And then when we started dating, we kind of like reevaluated a little bit. Like, does this church actually have, like, do they believe the same things that we believe at like a core? Do they, I feel like you're a little bit more eloquent at this than I am, but he
Just
had a
the
lot of
doctrinal
opinions.
views and what do they believe in?
And
Sure.
I will say, just kind of circle back to the question you asked him about like when he made his faith his
Yeah,
own.
right.
I think differently. I've always felt that my faith was my own, but I went through a significant period of doubt, which I had to come back from. And at that point, when I did, I was like, no, I've like seriously established that like I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, like all this stuff. I want to be committed to this. But I was not very mature in my faith. So that was a big thing for me coming into college. I wanted to be more mature in my faith. I wanted to know more scripture, wanted to be more well-versed in all of it. And that was something he was better at than I am. So when it came to evaluating churches and stuff, we definitely leaned in sometimes to his knowledge of like what's going on behind the scenes and what we should be looking for when they preach the gospel and stuff and the kind of message that they're sending. So through all of that, we ended up bouncing around quite a bit until we landed at the FBC Woodstock plant.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
Yeah.
Because I know that you did make that trek and that drive. How long of a distance is that? Maybe like what, a half-hour drive?
It was
It's about 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had to migrate outside of Harrisonburg to be able to find a church home that kind of stuck. So how long did you attend FBC Shenandoah, and what did you find there in community?
I think we were there for like a year and a half.
Probably.
We started going, I think, midway through our junior year. We actually were there on their first ever service. I don't remember. We went there because you knew about it, and it was Don Hartog was preaching. So we were there when they were outside and everything. But anyway, we ended up going back and being there for about a year and a half, and started caravanning down with some other people that he lived with.
Cool.
So
Bring a crowd.
We did.
Right?
yeah.
All got in a mom van and we all drove together.
I think the piece about community, though, I'm sure some of it helped that there are people at that church who already knew Todd and knew Silas Pearson was coming with us sometimes too, so people knew him as well. And I think that helped with like maybe the welcoming, but just in general, the people there were so kind and so excited to have us be traveling all that way. And it was like a smaller community, which I like really like. And yeah, they were just like, it was very obvious that they were happy that we were there, and they always went out of their way to welcome us. And just the teaching style, and again, like the way that the gospel was preached every week was like really important to us.
Yeah, that's cool. So fast forward in time a little bit. You guys graduate, and there's some sort of proposal that probably happened along the way, and you got married. What was that timing like? So when was your wedding date?
So I'll kind of take a step back before the wedding date,
Yeah.
go to the proposal date. We had gotten back home. She went back down to Yorktown, and I went back to Winchester in the spring of
We
23.
graduated.
We graduated spring
Yeah.
of 23. And then we both moved back home, and the plan was to soon get engaged so that we could be together. And I had started a new job, and I was about 2 days in, and I was here at the church playing basketball on a Wednesday night, and I was going to propose to Sloan that weekend. I was going to drive down to Yorktown and do it. And then I decided to break my leg.
Yeah. I heard stories about that.
Yes.
Didn't sound good.
No, it did
fun.
did not sound good. So that delayed the proposal by a good chunk.
9 months.
9 months, to be exact.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guy was doing something there.
He was.
Right?
He definitely was.
Right. And then fast forward to March of 2024, and the Lord had provided just a career job for me that I'm very blessed with. And
In town locally, right? So
right downtown.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I was able to then get the ring, and I was able to pop the question on March 3rd, 2024. And then we got married October 6th, 2024.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. Still
Thank you.
very under a year. Very new.
Yeah.
Very new.
But she hasn't left me yet.
That's
you know?
amazing.
Oh my gosh.
People always say the first year is the hardest, but you guys look happy. So,
It's been really fun.
awesome.
Yeah.
And so now that you're officially in Winchester and attending FBC, walk us through kind of how you got re-plugged in to fellowship, because now you're a young adult. You're not a student. You're not a kid. Yes, you do still have parents and family around here, but how are you making FBC more your own home and community?
Well, I think it's difficult when you're in college because you're just here sporadically. And I think the number one thing with community is it's all about consistency. And it's kind of an impossibility to be consistent when you are, constantly going back and forth. And so I think now that we're here, we're able to really commit to the biggest thing is just serving the body. I think and being engaged with the body outside of just a Sunday morning. And I think having the time and the desire to want to do those things, being involved with Keystone. We've been attending, a biblical training center class. We finally been able to commit to one of those. And so I think in doing so, it's really helping us grow to learn more about the people at FBC, because there are so many, and it's impossible to get to know everyone if you just go to, the Sunday morning 9 a.m. service at the 10:45. And so being more involved with the church, I think, is definitely helped us grow in community, at least on my end. I don't speak on behalf of you.
How did this act? I mean, so Todd's coming home, and here
You're
you
right.
are basically getting assimilated into a new church and people that you don't know. What did that
Yeah.
look like on your end?
I mean, it was interesting only because, again, like the Housers. So I was entering into a world of a very well-known family, very established in the church, which meant that kind of like already plugged into some things, or like people would they would know who I was.
And treat you like family already.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. But I recognized a need for, I guess, an avenue just to know people like my age a little bit more, because I'm not from this area, so the only person I really knew was Todd. And I love him, but I also want some like girlfriends
Sure.
and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I had heard about Keystone and started going pretty regularly. And at the time, he was working like night shifts at Costco, so he couldn't really go on Thursdays. So I was
Interesting.
going by myself
Okay.
a lot.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. So I got to meet a lot of people there and get a lot more involved. And yeah, that's
Have your
kinda
own
where I plugged
identity
in.
almost.
Yeah.
Coming that way.
Yeah.
So walk us through the Keystone ministry. What's your experience with it, Todd? When you came back home during the summers, did you get plugged into that specific ministry? Because I know that there is a period of time, and you still do it, where you graduate from high school and you instantly get swooped away, and you're kind of just indoctrinated into now the young adult Keystone ministry. What did that look like from your standpoint of being exposed to the young adult ministry here at FBC?
Yeah, I think I got a little bit of exposure in college. I would say that when I was home, I was primarily focused on working, and so I think I attended a few Keystones here and there. But I think when I was just in college, it was like, well, I already have my community. I don't need to double down and have more. Which I've seen its negative ramifications now that I'm home, because it meant that I wasn't really pursuing any community that was going to eventually be here once I moved back. And so it was funny, because when I came back and I started going to Keystone regularly, it was like, oh, I don't know these people. And I was like, I've been at this church. I know names, I know the Pools, and I know, Kevin and Amber Connor and all these different people by name, but not actually knowing them. And so it felt almost very similar to the way Sloan felt of just going into a brand new group of people. And so it's been cool though now to have spent so much time there that you really do start to foster really good community that I look back on now and wish I would have spent some more time when I was here in college actually pursuing that as well. But
there are similarities of diving into college where you don't know anybody and pursuing community to then being in a town where you don't know that many people. For you, Sloan, and Todd, for you, you're saying I didn't really know that many young adults here at FBC. So Keystone's been around for how long? Do you have the history for me here?
We just celebrated 6 years.
6 years? Yeah. Cool.
So.
And you're here with me today because you have a little bit of a leadership role. And walk us through what that transition looked like, because Caleb Pearson and others helped launch Keystone in that time period 6 years ago.
Right.
And he and Hannah now have 2 children. And his world and role at church is growing quickly. And he decided it's time to just phase out of leadership.
Yep.
What did that conversation look like for you guys?
Yeah, it was I sat down with Caleb and I told him that I was involved with leadership roles at InterVarsity, and so I was coming to Keystone now for a couple months, and I was like, I'm ready to take on a leadership role, and I want to, if the opportunity is available, because that was something I really enjoyed with InterVarsity. And so I talked to him, and I was like, hey, I know if there's any possibility of joining Keystone's ministry team and just being more involved in any way, would love to start doing that. And I kind of said as like a joke, I was like, I also know that you're getting older and you're eventually gonna
you're ready to kick them out,
right? I was like, well, you're eventually gonna step back. And I was like, I've led a ministry before. I was very blessed by the ability to actually lead InterVarsity for a year, and it's a big role. And so I was like, that's not something that I'm a stranger to. And I think Caleb took that a little too seriously, because 2 weeks later I got a text message from him that was saying, how serious were you about that? Because I think it's time for me to really start taking a step back. And my first reaction was, what?
Yeah.
But my second reaction was then to go talk to her, because at the time it would have been summer of last year that this was going on. And so we already knew we were getting married in October, and I didn't want to overcommit myself and also be getting married and being a newlywed and wanting to spend time with her as well and foster our relationship. But her and I sat down and talked about it for a little bit and decided this is what we felt the Lord was calling us to, because it was fun, because in InterVarsity, both of us served on leadership in InterVarsity. And so we both were not strangers to being leaders. And I think this was going to end up being a very similar situation. And so we've been, it's been very cool that we can do it together and that we remain doing leadership together.
Well, it's not just a singular person, and so you guys are a team, and you also mentioned a leadership team. So explain a little bit about the behind the scenes there with the leadership team, and paint a picture to those that don't really know what's going on. What would you say is the purpose of Keystone?
Yeah.
Why do you exist?
You want me to tackle that? So there's this gap that I've found in churches, or just in community in general, that there's the youth and then there's adults, but then there's this awkward group in between, where it's like, I'm too old for youth, but I feel a little too young for adult. And I think that's the reason why Keystone exists, is because it's a bridge ministry. That's what I've heard Caleb call it. One of the first times that I ever heard Caleb speak at Keystone was the Keystone is a bridge ministry, to kind of get from one point to the next. And Keystone exists to provide a place for community for those individuals that are between the age of 18 to 29, kind of in this awkward phase of life, where you're really starting to grow up and start to experience what life actually is outside of school, or even just starting in the workforce right after high school. But then, so there's the one aspect of community, the reason Keystone exists, but also the second aspect, and it's the most important, is our relationship in Christ. And it's so important that we are in community with one another to be able to grow in the grace and knowledge of the Lord. That's a recurring theme throughout Scripture, is being together and helping one another grow. And this group could so easily become a group left behind in churches, just because they're sometimes not always the focus. And that's I'm not jabbing at any churches, but that's just sometimes how it is, because we have a lot of people at Keystone that actually don't attend FBC. They attend other churches, but
I wanted to ask about that, because it's not truly an outreach ministry,
Right.
but there's not many other things around town for young adults.
Yeah.
And especially if you are a believer and pursuing community, there's not many other young adult ministries at other churches. So if I'm looking up Christian young adults, Winchester, Virginia, I would think and hope Keystone's going to come to the top of that list, because there's not many other things. Right. So you are attracting other young adults. Who are they going to other churches? Like, what does that look like of how they're getting plugged into Keystone if they're not really calling FBC their church home?
Right. Yeah, I think it's you're seeing a lot of people actually come through the website. We've talked about our Keystone ministry team. Raquel Wallace serves on that team, and she actually found Keystone through the website. And I was like, I didn't realize people would search that up. Or search up, a local Christian ministry for young adults. But I mean, I've had people, even as of 2 weeks ago at Keystone, I asked them, this is my first time seeing you, and they were like, I found you all on the website. And so I think it's something people desire, and so if their church doesn't offer it, and they desire it enough, they're going to go search for it. Yeah. And I think that we are very blessed at FBC to be able to offer a ministry that is able to accommodate that desire that young adults do have.
I think you're spot on, because nothing over time has changed. And again, in my 25 years ago leadership position at Connection, we were having the same conversations and recognizing that, yes, this is a top of the funnel, wide entry point to allow people to get connected within the church body. And so the ultimate goal and desire is for them to be able to grow and thrive and grow, connect, and serve within the church body. And if there's fringe people, and if they have a common interest or common kind of just age almost, that there's something there that we have in common, a bond through Christ and through our age. Let's connect, right? And so I like how you're calling and you're mentioning service as well, that's part of your heart and passion to serve the body. And so how is Keystone serving the body right now? Like, what have you guys done in the past that you can say, yeah, we were part of that and we helped do that? What comes to mind?
You got anything?
Well, what's funny is that you're talking to two of the newer members.
I know, I can tell.
Team.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I definitely want to shout out the members who have kind of come over, because I guess I'm kind of spinning into a lot of things right now, but there was a pretty big shift in community over the past 6 months, I'd say. A good amount of people left just to go into community groups and stuff, and a bunch of people came in. Exactly.
Being funneled into the church body.
Exactly. And so Todd and I are newer to the leadership team. I mean, Raquel and Matt Wallace, Henry Poole, Kimber Replog, and Cole McQuaid do so much of the behind the scenes work, so much thought and care put into what they do on the ministry team. And Cole is a resident expert on a lot of past Keystone things. So I think he probably would be able to answer that question a little bit better. I know that there are ways that we want to be involved, and there's talk of potentially being more involved with missions.
Well, I'll throw out there, because with my event coordinator hat here at FBC, a year and a half ago at the Global Church Week, there's an entire night that Keystone really helped spearhead and pull off for family night. I know that many times I would always go to Caleb and be like, Caleb, I need 10 people to help do X, Y, and Z, serve, set up chairs, do whatever. And he's like, on it, done. And so just having that heart. And I mean, there's also the flexibility, and there's the time that you guys have, and just life gets busier the older you get. So enjoy the free times that you have to be able to serve in that way,
Yeah. I mean, I think some of it's been Keystone. There are Keystone members involved with Follow the Star. A lot of people volunteered for that, and for what was the big outdoor event we had.
Big outdoor service. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of Keystone members helped with setup and running some of the games and stuff then. So I think we're continually looking for ways to be involved and serve, and just through discipleship. There's been discussion with that too. So
Yeah.
it kind of is like the world is our oyster, and we really appreciate when people reach out to us, because sometimes we don't know what our opportunities are
Sure.
to serve. But definitely always looking for ways to be involved.
So if somebody is a young adult in that age range, 18 to 29, and they're like, I've never been yet, what would they expect when they come? Because it's Thursday nights, 7 o'clock. What does that Thursday night typically look like? What do you guys do?
People usually show up like 30 minutes early.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's a shocker for kids.
It's fun.
Okay.
They usually show up, and you'll find people kind of hanging out downstairs, just like chatting when you walk in. And then 7:05 rolls around, and we kind of roll into F3.
The lower level auditorium.
Yes.
That's the official.
Is that
the official
Yes.
term?
Yes.
The lower level auditorium, and Todd welcomes everybody, and we usually are sitting at some tables and try to kind of spread out to talk to new people, and just find that sitting at tables can sometimes, I think, just open up an opportunity to actually talk with someone you're sitting across from and you never have before. Usually have like a fun opening question or something to get the conversation rolling, and then you can take the rest of it. I'll let you explain the second half.
Yeah, no, I think it's dependent on the week of what we're doing, maybe what series we're in right now. We just wrapped up a series in January on the book of Galatians. And
Wow.
so I got to walk us through a good bit of that, and so I'll do a little bit of a lecture style of teaching, but I'm also someone that doesn't love lectures all the time, and so I like to just engage with people in discussion as well. So whether or not that's table discussion or whether or not that's group discussion, I think it's an opportunity for me to be able to engage with people at Keystone and for them to engage with each other about the scripture and just wrestle with some of these hard truths. Galatians is no easy book.
Do you find that forum is well received? Would you say that the crowd who comes wants to have that interaction?
Yeah.
As opposed to lecture style?
Yeah, I would say once I started leading, I wanted to get a feeler of where everyone was at. I was like, this is brand new. Caleb started this thing. Caleb brought us to here, and now it's kind of the reins have been passed. And so I wanted to get an idea of where everyone was at. And the saying that I always say is, people that are committed to something will show up for something. And so if it's something that you are committed to and that you want to go to, you're going to keep coming back. And I think we just continue to see that. There's consistency in this group, that they are not only committed to the Lord and to growing in relationship with Him, but also to each other, and to want to continue to show up and to discuss these truths. And I think, we're talking about an upcoming series that we're started, and I know people are really excited about that. And just being able to engage in discussion about that.
Just on the idea of worship. So the next, it kicked off last night, for those of you guys watching and listening in the moment of this dropping. And so there'll be 5 more weeks after that. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just neat to be able to, by the way, I'll be there as well. So thanks for letting me in.
Right.
I will not show my ID when I come in the door.
Right.
But it'll be cool to hang out with you guys. So if you kind of get down that path of doing some study, you have some interaction, some connection, relationship building times, when does it typically end? Like, how long does it last on a Thursday night?
Yeah, I always like to say it depends on how long I'm going to talk for.
So very loose.
Yeah.
It seems very flexible, not locked down to any one specific kind of way of doing things.
Right. I would say most likely we end probably at an hour 15, hour 30, hour and a half. But then we also like to do what's called a post-Keystone move, which is our simple way of saying we're probably going to cook out to get a milkshake.
Nice.
Or go to Dairy Queen, or go somewhere. And so we just, again, we're at that age where we still want to do those things. I like to go to bed early as much as the next person, but I also love to stay up late and go get a milkshake at Cookout.
Sure.
And so I think that's the beauty of this group, is that there is such flexibility and not as much concrete. There isn't, for most people in Keystone, I would say a natural age out is when you have your first kid, is a natural just kind of, no matter what age you're at, that sometimes can be, okay, it's time to maybe move on to something different that's more their speed. But for like Sloan and I, we don't have kids at the moment, and so we don't have that natural responsibility to be home at a certain time, to have that stuff, so we can be out until 10, 11 o'clock. maybe we want to go to bed,
Yeah,
but
right.
but we have that ability to do that, and that's the
Sure.
I think it's the beauty of the ministry.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. Again, they're just having the flexibility and the heart that you guys have to just be like, let's just go hang out and just continue to build relationships and have discussions about God if needed and help people out where they're at in whatever kind of difficulties in life. I think it's great. And I have to ask one last final question, and it's always the awkward one.
Yeah.
So most people associate young adult ministries with a dating site. You know, this is like the place to go. And again, back in the day, I'll continue to date myself, there was a young adult ministry at McLean Bible Church that was huge called Frontline. And the leadership there we would interact with, and they said that was one of their biggest just kind of misconceptions, that people would show up because they're like, we're looking to find our spouse, you know. So but there's a reality to it. So what have you seen over the time that you've been there? Because, you know, there is something to, I want to interact with people, I want to find connections, and there could potentially be some, you know, results, because I can probably name more people than on my hand that I know that over the years of Fellowship Bible Church young adult ministries, there have been marriages that have come from it. Right. So I'm just curious of what you see at Keystone right now in that kind of dating world.
There definitely have been relationships that have occurred by meeting at Keystone. I think it's a difficult question for me to think about, because I never went into it with that headspace. Because you came in already. Because we were already together. But just speaking from like experience, like in InterVarsity, that was definitely the mindset. People liked to. It was an opportunity, and I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, because at the end of the day, like, you're in a group of like-minded individuals who are all pursuing Christ. It's like kind of the perfect place to potentially find someone. But I also think we do a good job of not focusing on that, or like making that the thing, at least from my perspective. I think,
and being mindful of that, you know, so as a leadership team, you just recognizing, okay, things are naturally bound to relationships being formed. But I think if your focus is consistently on Christ and pointing people to this is why we're here, you can filter out those things as they come, right? It's funny because, again, I seriously know so many people that over the years that they've been able to connect, and I think there's value to that. I'm not demeaning it at all. I'm bringing it up because it's just an obvious just state of where young adults are, looking for true, authentic connections.
Absolutely.
That are based in Christ. You're not going to get that anywhere downtown in the old walking mall, you know, of going out on the town. So you've got to find it somewhere. Any last final thoughts that we didn't get a chance to cover about Keystone that you feel like people should know if they're really looking for those kind of connections?
I feel like I would just say that it took me a minute to feel like I actually belonged there. And that wasn't because of anyone being unwelcoming, or like, it wasn't because of anyone, I will just say. It was just, it can be hard to enter into a group of people who seem like they know each other really well and have maybe this history of hanging out and stuff. But you just you gotta lean in a little bit to that and like be willing to step out of your comfort zone, to say hi to someone you don't know, and to lean into those interactions, because it does take a little bit of time to build like some genuine relationships, but it's definitely worth it. Because I remember sitting at a table, I don't remember how many, I'd been going there for a bit of time, and finally being like, I feel like I really belong here. And it was so refreshing, and also it just was really rewarding to be like, I'm glad I didn't give up on this, because it can be challenging, but it is so worth it to just stick it through and know that like everyone else is probably experiencing the same thing or did at some point.
That's true.
So
everyone's going to be feeling the same kind of anxiety of, oh, am I fitting in or not? Yeah. Well, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate just giving the opportunity for us to get to know you better, get to hear about what God is doing in the ministry. And 7 o'clock Thursday nights, lower level auditorium, and potentially maybe, 8:30 or so at cookout, on Thursday nights.
You never know.
You never know who you're going to bump into there.
Right.
Well, I'll just pass on a couple other quick thoughts about just what's happening around the church here. Our other podcasts, just keep on the lookout for those every single week. On Tuesdays, the Sermon Spotlights drop. Yesterday, the Global Church podcast, there is an opportunity that I had to chat with Jim Poole and his trip to Uganda, so you won't want to miss that. Look for that as well, and continue to share your thoughts and stories and questions and comments on our show notes, or as well on fbcva.org/podcast, and you get a chance to interact and engage with us that way. And we hope that this was just a neat, valuable conversation, whether you're a young adult or not. I think it's valuable to be encouraged by what God is doing. And also just know that not every person just neglects God when they go off to school. So I appreciate your all stories about that, of being rooted and grounded in the faith. So Sloan, Todd, thanks so much. Appreciate it. And, once again, for all you guys watching and listening, let's be reminded that we want to have Christ be the focus of our lives each and every day.